Life doesn't come with an instruction manual.
So we made one.
I'm Sarah.
And I'm Maciek.
And this is the Solutions Manual Podcast, your guide to making the most of your life, health, career, and relationships.
Subscribe, leave a comment, and share. Let's dive into our next episode. The psychological feeling of overwhelm comes after something else happens first. So should we, where do we start? Do we start with just defining what overwhelm is, or do we go with what you experience first? How about you tell me, because I'm sure you've felt overwhelmed before.
Yes, I do.
Multiple situations, different situations.
Yes.
So let's talk about this.
Okay. I think we do tend to use this word more in two particular scenarios. One is overwhelmed by the support that you might receive after a marriage or a death or a new job, something like this, some life event that's significant. And the other one is feeling overwhelmed when there's a workload, there's extra responsibilities, there's just too much going on, or there's too much to handle. And in both of those situations, keep reflecting on the last time you might have felt overwhelmed. What happens to that? What happens is that you stop. If you look at the athletes that win championships that are overcome or overwhelmed by the experience and the win, what do you see them do? They stand in the middle of the court or the field and they just wait, right?
Yeah,
they
frozen. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they allow their physical body to experience it. There's maybe coaches and people and teams and families all coming. There's a lot of chaos around it, but for those people who feel and are experiencing that positive overwhelm, you can observe that they actually stop. And then because there needs to be an award ceremony and medals and pictures, and there's things that happen after that they need to be physically present for, so it moves forward in a natural way. But let's say we're talking about this feeling of overwhelm when there's projects at work, there's projects at home, there's things that you're dealing with in your personal life. What happens to someone when they feel overwhelmed in that way? Well, the same thing, they stop. Now, what we want to talk about here, I think, is when that pause becomes extended and allows other feelings and other thoughts and other rationales and judgments and things to come in that prevent the next step or prevent the clarity that you need to know why you're overwhelmed and what to do about it. That's the kind of overwhelm that I think we're talking about today. So it might not be as sudden or obvious as it would be in the sports example, because there's a game, someone wins, but for something like an accumulation of work pressure or workload or tasks, or even just your own thoughts about things that don't really get addressed as they come in, that accumulation can happen, or you can start to feel anxious, busy, overwhelmed that way. There's a lot of big emotions at once that you can see physically in somebody, but someone also might feel overwhelmed by, I have so much work to do, I have tasks, I have all these things to manage. You might still feel the sweat on your palms, that kind of heart rate change, pressure in your chest, the knot in your stomach. Your posture, instead of being big and out, might kind of shrink a little bit, but there's a change in your physical body. Maybe there's a little bit of tension in your legs, in your feet. People can be overwhelmed with joy, right? Overwhelmed with support. That might elicit some sort of physical feeling like pressure in the chest, that warmth you get. There might be some stomach sensation. You might have a little bit more sensitivity in your face. You're more aware of the salivation in your mouth. There's a postural change. There's those kinds of physical things that happen when you experience or interpret that outpouring of support or joy or happiness It's still the same physical sensation. Some people might just interpret it a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Someone might feel or say that they feel overwhelmed, they feel stressed, and by stressed, maybe distressed.
Distressed. Hmm.
Maybe they feel anxious, maybe they feel unsure or uncertain, or those additional labels that you can put on feeling
Hmm.
overwhelmed or experiencing this all of this input at once, leading to this feeling or this interpretation that
Yes.
there's an overwhelm. Now, for someone experiencing this kind of overwhelm in the mind, that's a very difficult place to be in because it's, we, especially when we think, I should be able to handle this, I should be able to manage my tasks, my priorities, or there's a million reasons why you might feel that way.
Yes, and this is what people come to us with, right? It's the states it's the feeling that they experience. And as you said, it's typically when people seek help, it's not because they're overjoyed, or they're typically because there's just too much going on and they feel like they cannot handle it anymore.
Hmm.
And okay, so the way that we would define it, and I think it's important to understand that this is not an emotional problem. So overwhelm is best described as a cognitive saturation under load or under threat, which
Yeah.
means that the amount of tasks that you're trying to handle at the same time
Yeah.
exceeds the capacity, your cognitive capacity, or exceeds your working memory capacity, which means when
Exactly.
you reach that point, everything that's related to your working memory capacity or cognitive capacity drops, right? The prioritization doesn't happen. Your judgment's it's dramatically degraded. You might freeze, right? Or become impulsive or whatever the things will be that try to get you out of that state. But it's important to understand that it's a state where your performance is inadequate. It's not an emotional problem. And the
Hmm.
feelings that you've described that we would uh, identify when overwhelm happens would be this attention tunneling, which you said, where you become focused or hyper focused on something, and it's typically an emotion that you feel. It could be like this something we call procedural collapse. So even if there's like how to do things, you kind of feel like you've forgotten what to do next. There might be other things that you've already outlined, right? The verbal shutdown, you might be difficult to even express what's going on. You may freeze. You may just want to withdraw and say, I'm okay, screw it. I'm not going to deal with this anymore. I cannot take it anymore.
Hmm.
But this is not an emotional problem. And I think that those are the things that we need to understand that it's a physiological problem first, and then the feelings come later.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's and the reason why it's important to understand is that you cannot think your way out of overwhelm. There is no insight or knowledge that will change or help you to recover the state. Recovery requires change of your physical state.
Hmm.
It means for that reason that it's trainable, and that the training is, again, it's relatively simple, it's repeatable, and you can help people with that. It's not always intuitive. Like, a lot of people don't know how strong their mental muscles are. I think in general, like, how do you know how much mental strength you have? Because again, so we define it as a cognitive saturation, right? That you're trying to deal with more than you can handle.
I am the kind of person that doesn't like to make multiple trips from the car to the house to bring in groceries. I'm going to stick it on my pinkies or every finger that I have, even if it means I'm in a splint for a week, right? I don't do that anymore, but you can imagine wanting to bring in all of your bags of groceries in one, masked as efficiency. But when the truth is, you really just only have the capacity to maybe carry two bags instead of three or four.
Mhm. Okay, so you're physically not strong enough to carry everything at once.
Could be not strong enough, they're too
Okay.
heavy, they're awkward. But if you think about that from I think that might be intuitive. People bring in their own groceries. Even if you get them delivered, you still have to move them into your kitchen and put things away one by one, right?
Okay.
So I think it's a similar, if we translated this over to what happens in the mind, it's the same thing. You're
Yes.
only capable of taking in so many. mental bags of groceries at once before your pinkies are going to fall off. So,
Exactly. But it can be improved, right? So you can improve that
but it
capacity,
can be
right? Yes.
improved. But the same is true for your mind when it comes to all the input that it can handle at once. But regardless, you still can only manage one at a time.
Yes, and it's all. I think it's a great example with physical strength, right? And also probably when you need to do a couple of runs, you can probably carry more on the first one because your muscles get fatigued, right? So we call you can deplete your cognitive reserves as you're spending them as well, right? It's a similar
Hmm.
way. The repeating the same thing for the 10th time, right? Doing the same run for the 10th time, you might have less physical strength as well, and you can build that capacity. I think another important analogy here to understand is that it doesn't mean that if you're not strong enough, you cannot carry the groceries from your car. You just need to do more trips and take less at
Yeah.
the same time. So, so that's, I think that's a great principle. It doesn't mean that, oh, I'm overwhelmed. It means I'm not strong enough. There's nothing I can do about this. No, it just simply means you might need a different approach. You might not have worked out your mental muscle. There might be very little cognitive capacity that you have
Hmm.
because you never trained it, right?
Hmm.
It's that simple, and it requires you not you shouldn't be comparing yourself to others. Just because someone else can handle more at the same time means that they probably practiced more or their mental mastery is stronger. It doesn't mean that you cannot handle this. You just need to handle this in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So what do you do about it?
Yeah, so because we've already defined it as not enough mental strength, not enough cognitive reserve to
Hmm.
deal with everything that's going on at the same time.
Yeah.
One thing, or number one thing that um, you can do is, one, reduce that load
Yeah.
or increase your reserves, right? And ideally, you
Mm.
will do both, because what you want to do as you go through life is to continue to build that capacity to be able to handle more and more things as they're happening. And it's
Hmm.
important to work on that, not only just because that you will be just able to perform better in a moment, but as we are getting older, there will be more demand that is being put on us every day. We don't think about this daily, but let's say if you get certain conditions or diseases, very basic
Hmm.
things can require more efforts to complete, including mental effort.
Hmm.
Remembering your medicines, the effort that goes into daily tasks, even sometimes getting dressed or doing groceries or paying attention to things that you don't have to necessarily pay attention to when you're
Yeah.
younger. All these
Yeah.
things increase the load as you get older. So ideally, and you also, it's like same thing with muscles, right? You want to have some strength left to be independent later in life. And if you don't do anything about this will just go away. So you want to
Well,
work.
these are,
Yeah.
yeah, these are the things that you take for granted, which really just means they're not really draining my mental reserve or noticeably until they start to. I can put my groceries in the top shelf and I take that for granted in a way. I'm able to do it so easily. It doesn't drain. I can do 1,000 reps of penne pasta in the top shelf today, but that might not always be the case,
No,
20
well,
years
no,
from
it will
now.
not be the case 20 years from now, right?
Yeah.
So increasing your cognitive capacity, right? So putting specific
Hmm.
trainings and tools in place in order to be able to do this. And the second was just load shedding, right? Trying to do less at the
Hmm.
same time. And we call this like this immediate reduction of your cognitive input is the number one tool to deal with overwhelm, especially
Yeah.
when we're talking about the demanding overwhelm, like a workplace situation type of an overwhelm. And it's
Hmm.
very simple. It's like one task, one objective, one time horizon.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
You just need to just here and now, what is my next immediate step that I'm going to take? That's it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that if you ever end up in a situation where you are unable to say what is your next immediate action or things that you need to do in one sentence, you're overloaded.
Yes.
Because we often
Yeah.
forget about this. We believe we are someone we're not, right? We cannot really multitask either, right? The multitasking doesn't work. It's a myth. What people
Hmm.
do instead, or people who multitask believe that when they say, "Oh, I'm great at multitasking," they're switching tasks,
Hmm.
which greatly drains your mental energy. It's the
Hmm.
fastest way to overwhelm but it feels like you are doing a lot of things. You're not. You're just unnecessarily wasting your
Yeah.
mental reserves.
Yeah.
So load shedding, take one bag in each hand
Yeah.
at a time. It's
Yeah.
much more manageable. Might take
Yeah.
a bit longer, but it's entirely manageable, right? You're not going to damage or harm yourself doing this.
What if you're in the middle of the workday and you have that feeling that there's just
Yeah,
so much to do, there's so much to catch up on. First, it might be a good idea to, when you do the pause, like what have you actually done leading up to that point in that day, right?
yeah,
There's an exercise that we recommend, which takes a little bit of effort. Every half hour, just do a written down the actions and the tasks that you've actually completed in detail so that you can really see where the effort's being put and where the drains are.
yeah,
And you can get a much more accurate sense of what you're actually doing.
yeah.
And it's not to just so that you can move closer to being able to reprioritize and not feel that overwhelm that forces you to have to stop later when you really
Yes.
can't afford to.
Yeah, so you're alluding to something called the Hawthorne's effect, and it's something that where our behavior will change when we start observing it, or when someone else is observing
Mm-hmm.
us. But we can
Mm-hmm.
do this to ourselves in a way. And the reason why it
Yeah.
works is that sometimes we're just simply unaware of what is draining our mental reserves in a moment.
Yeah.
And people are surprised sometimes when they do this. Oh, I thought I'm working for 30 minutes, but there was a phone, there was an email, there was this, someone called me, I scrolled through TikTok, right? All these things happening. Well, of course,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to add up to your feeling of being overwhelmed. It starts physiologically first. All these feelings and all the
Yes.
psychological thing that you are experiencing, this is secondary. It's not
Mm-hmm.
the overwhelm itself. It's just how you're interpreting the physiological response that your body has. So
Mm-hmm.
another thing that you can do, or techniques that people can do to simply manage this in a moment, is it's as simple as tension release, right? So you do a quick body scan. And
Mm.
so what is tense, right? Is there muscle tension? Tension, intentionally release it.
Yeah.
Controlled breathing is another thing that you can do. Just slow down your breathing. That's all you need to do. Breathe into your belly. That's enough to change your physical state because it allows you to regain control over what your next action should be.
Yeah. Or breathe into your D spot, rather.
Yes, that's
Mm-hmm.
exactly.
Yeah. But what happens when you do this is you the brain slows down as well, right?
Yes.
And then on top of all the layers of
Mm.
thoughts that come off of that to
Yes.
stop momentarily so that you can really think, okay, this is what I do next. And then you
Yes.
do the thing next.
Yes, because it feels intuitive. I have all these thoughts and feelings. So the intuition
Hmm.
is I need to deal with the thoughts and feelings. But
Yeah.
that's why it just doesn't work. That's why all your apps
Yeah.
don't work. That's what all the whatever the social media influencers are trying to sell you. It's just not going to work because you're dealing with the symptoms and it's
Yeah.
not where the problem is. So for overwhelm, you interrupt the physiology first.
Yes.
And this is mandatory, right? It's like all the cognitive or the emotional techniques are not going to work because you're working on a symptom, not on the problem.
What's the difference between then overwhelm and anxiety for some people?
Yeah, okay, these are two completely two different things, but that's a great question because the overwhelm is very often mislabeled.
Hmm.
Like we think we're experiencing something, and we know that our thoughts and emotions always follow the biology first. So there's something
Hmm.
happening in your body, and then you have the thoughts or emotions in response to those changes.
Hmm.
It's a performance issue in the moment,
Hmm.
it's not an emotional thing. But because
Hmm.
people experience or have certain thoughts or emotions, they label it as anxiety, right? I'm trying
Yeah.
to carry too many bags. They rapidly jump to this, oh, I'm anxious. Like, and it's
Yeah.
interesting because you would never think about this, although it might be
Hmm.
anxiety causing, right, to you if you let it when you're carrying the groceries from the car to your home and say, well, I cannot carry 10 bags in each hand at a time to say, oh, I must have anxiety.
Yeah.
That happens. Like that mislabeling happens a lot when it comes to overwhelm. So
Yeah.
people typically, there are
Yeah.
four areas that people typically mislabel the overwhelm for. They believe they have poor time management skills. Like I see this
Okay.
like repeatedly, like especially in a professional environment or at work. Oh, I'm poor time manager. There's so many things I need to do. I'm overwhelmed, but they don't recognize this as I'm managing my time poorly. Their manager might say, "Oh, you're poorly managing your time." And what happens is you go on a time management course. You
Mm.
got to watch an online video. Somebody gives you some sort of a stupid technique that like it's none of those things work, right? You might have went on
Mm-mm.
courses. People spend tons of money on this. They read and write books on this, and nothing works. They're still
Mm-hmm.
overwhelmed. They still cannot plan their time because they're trying to solve the symptom and not the underlying problem, which is the insufficient mental strength. They're trying to solve this by adding additional things. So they're making the problem worse by trying to solve the symptoms. And this is prevalent. Like everywhere you go, like on every
Yeah.
workplace I've ever been offers this type of bullshit to people. And people spend a lot of time on this, and businesses spend tons of money. Overwhelm is often misinterpreted as poor time management skills, but it isn't. The second one you mentioned is mistaken for anxiety. Because if you struggle to deal with the weight of what is happening in the moment, and you look around and other people can, the next thing you're going to have, the next comparison
Mm.
script is going to kick in and say, why I am unable to do what other people can. Like you know,
Yeah.
it's like if you go to the gym and you try to bench press, and there's a guy next to you, who spent his entire life in the gym and he bench presses 10 times that, you don't necessarily immediately become anxious because of that. Oh, I'm an addict.
Yeah.
He's better. Well, no, it's kind of obvious. Like this person can can bench press more because
Yeah.
he spent the last 25 years practicing it. And you're just starting, right? Of course, it's going to, but so it doesn't give you that. But when it comes to mental performance,
Yeah.
we
Very
don't
easy
seem
to
to do
do.
this. So very
Yeah.
often, anxiety follows your comparison to others,
Thoughts.
your thoughts and your emotions,
Mm.
and then you start feeling anxious. The third
Mm-hmm.
one that people confuse overwhelm with is low resilience, which is partially
Oh,
true.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
People say,
Mm-hmm.
oh, like I'm just not resilient enough. I cannot do this. There's too much for me to handle, and so on and so on. Right. And again, if you go to the gym and you see someone lifting 5 times more than you do, well, you don't say, oh, I'm not resilient. I'm not strong enough. No, no, you say, well, I need to practice more in order to be able to do this. Right. It's not that you have low resilience, you just didn't practice. But it's
Yeah.
often described that people go on resilience courses and try to be this and try to be that. And again, none of this works, right? Because none of those things solve the
Yeah.
underlying problem. And the fourth one, which is huge as well, people commonly mistake overwhelm as lack of motivation.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
and this is a huge one because again, motivation is just yet another feeling.
Mm-hmm.
You had a motivational speaker, motivational course. What do I need to do to be motivated? Courses for managers. Keep your employees motivated. People tend to forget, like, no one is responsible for the emotions of other people. Like, your emotions are your responsibility. They don't exist outside of your head.
Mm-hmm.
And feeling motivated is just a feeling, and it
Yeah.
just comes and goes, right? I'm very motivated not to have a donut, right, and keep my diet. And it's very easy at 8 a.m. in the morning. It's very hard at, the 6 p.m. at night after a difficult day at work where loads of things happens. Kids are running, yelling around the house, right? It's much more difficult now because people
Yeah.
believe that motivation is something that they need to have. They don't. And overwhelm is very, very often mistaken by people as a lack of a certain feeling because they cannot make themselves do something that they believe they should be doing. So they wait for a feeling in order to do something about the situation they find themselves in. And
Yeah.
that's among the worst things that you can do. And again, it's perpetuated everywhere, right? Motivational course, motivational book, motivational exercise, how, like, it's everywhere. And none of that works.
Yeah. You just need to stop, check in with your body,
That's it.
and then reprioritize, do the next thing. That's it.
It sounds,
So simple, right?
it is simple, but it's not
Almost,
easy.
almost so like, oh, but it is difficult. It is difficult to do. And
Yeah.
it does take practice and it does take training.
Yeah. So let's summarize this. So overwhelm is a temporary loss of executive control that
Hmm.
is caused by your neurobiology. So in the same,
Yeah.
it's not enough mental strength to handle with everything that is going on in the moment. And
Yeah.
the problem is resolved by physiology first, typically
Yeah.
through prioritization, simplification, and then action in that order.
Yeah.
And this is why the training in that space is focused on two elements: quickly recognizing and dealing with the situation in a moment, and then long term, building your cognitive capacity and reserves so that you actually can carry more, that you can handle more at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's what gives you advantage. That what gives you, allows you to get ahead, right? That allows you to be that person that you compare yourself to. How is it possible that this person is handling so many things at the same time and I cannot cope and he or she is unfazed? It's not because you're better. It's not because there's something magical about them. They simply practiced.